Welcome to the Pot of Inquiry. Ready for some thought-provoking cerebral whipping and the destruction of ridiculous medical dogma? Want to shift those stale, moldy old paradigms? Well then, don that thinking cap of yours. Get down in the cave and join our host, Dr. Stephen Barrett, for this week's episode. Let's start spelunking.
My guest this week is Dr. Shivani Gupta. Dr. Gupta is a pioneer who redefined health and wellness industry by bridging the gap between ancient and modern medicine. She holds a PhD in Ayurvedic studies. Ayurveda is a 5,000-year-old philosophy that prevents disease and illness through the one connection of mind, body, and spirit. We talk a lot about this discipline of medicine that preceded almost all other forms of medicine, and then get into a discussion about the supplementation and how we can create a better balance and decrease inflammation with supplementation. Her company is Fusionary Formulas, and she has offered all of our listeners a discount on her great products for 15% off using the code POI24. So that's POI24, and the website is fusionaryformulas.com. Please enjoy my fascinating conversation with Dr. Shivani Gupta. All right, everyone. Welcome to the Pot of Inquiry. I am here with Dr. Shivani Gupta, and we're going to talk about some very cool things today, that being Ayurvedic medicine and her expertise in a very powerful natural supplement, Curcumin, and we'll get into that. But thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are and the space that you're running around in today.
Sure. So I have always been interested in health and wellness because of my own health journey. I've always struggled with my health, always had different GI issues growing up where I felt like I didn't have an immune system, but somehow everyone else got to have one. And so by the time I got to my 20s, I realized that this topic of gut health was an important one, and that India and Ayurveda had an entire system of health, healing, and medicine that was over 5,000 years old, that had so much wisdom within it for gut healing, gut management, all those things, and so much more. Truly, Ayurveda is a preventive system of healing. And so I took a deep dive into it. I studied it on my own. On all my trips to India, I would study at all the different gurus' feet. I'd travel all over to understand their perspectives, constantly trying to understand how I could bring the science to the West in a way that was doable and approachable. Mm-hmm. And then eventually I did my master's in Ayurvedic sciences and my PhD dissertation on turmeric. And that's when life really changed, because once I understood what turmeric could do, I was like, oh, hey, why are we all not using turmeric as an alternative when people are inflamed and in pain, especially for people like me? I can't take NSAIDs and things like that. It hurts. And so that really put me on this journey of teaching about turmeric, teaching about inflammation, sleep, and then finally teaching what Ayurveda has to offer us.
So tell us, because I know very little. I mean, when I started biohacking about, I guess, 7, 8 years ago, people would mention, Ayurvedic philosophies and that type of thing, but I really don't know much about it. And I think it's becoming more and more acknowledged, and people have more and more questions about it. But can you give me, just kind of a thumbnail sketch about the history of it? I know it has influenced a lot of other, like traditional Chinese medicine, these types of things. So
definitely. So Ayurveda is one of the most ancient systems. While traditional Chinese medicine was being developed, Ayurveda had already started writing these ancient texts that talked about how to live a preventive lifestyle. So Ayurveda means the science of life. And it's this Vedic ancient text that interestingly already delineated surgery, subspecialties of medicine. A lot of the things we call modern medicine now were actually already written about 5,000 years ago. They're not modern. They're just developed over time to be more and more effective for us. And what's great about Ayurveda is it encompasses a lot of different areas. So one big area we talk about in Ayurveda is the doshas, or the mind-body constitution. And we really like to classify people within their personality and body types to help them understand how to shift their lifestyle and customize their lifestyle accordingly. Then we teach about circadian rhythm. So circadian medicine is this area of medicine that I think is really going to explode over the next couple decades. And it originated within Ayurveda. Ayurveda said, we are nature and nature is us. So the more we live in rhythm with nature's clock, the healthier we're going to be. Then Ayurveda said gut health is the center of all health. And I think of our gut health inside of us as like a campfire. And our job is to really manage that and honor our gut health because it is our immune system. We now know that gut is the second brain. We have a gut microbiome. The vagus nerve connects it all. And so there's so much modern science proving what Ayurveda said the whole time, which was we need to manage our stress. We need to manage inflammation. We need to honor this gut if we want to have good health. And then Ayurveda also talks a lot about the herbs and spices and the plant kingdom and what it has to offer us when it comes to building vibrant health. And so really reaching into that more natural herbal toolkit is a big piece of what we do with people, showing them how to use teas and foods and different herbs to get the results that they want. And what's cool is modern science is now proving what these phytobotanicals can do, and that the botanicals can be studied and used at very, very advanced testing and advanced, I'm trying to say it all without saying pharma, but at pharma levels of study to understand what they do and how effective they are in the body. And then finally, we teach a lot about self-care and building a self-care rhythm that's actually detoxing, and self-care tools that we can do every day that are detoxing and supportive of having better health overall.
So you gave us a lot of information there. Let's unpack that just a little bit. The first thing you said that kind of stunned me a little bit was that this ancient medicine system had discussions of subspecialties like surgery and that. I mean, that is really, I mean, we think of surgery as kind of a quote modern, the last 200-300 years, really not much. I mean, of course, there's stuff in Egypt where they, you could see that they had trephine brains for subdural hematomas, these types of things. But that's pretty astounding that they were talking about that. So this is way ahead of its time.
Right. Yeah, it had so much wisdom packed into it. It talked about obstetrics, pediatrics, like all the different subspecialties that we talk about now. I mean, I'm sure we have many more now, but it's just fascinating to me that this ancient wisdom held so much wisdom. And then now we've departed so far from it, and we're slowly seeing this resurgence back to naturopathic, homeopathic, chiropractic, integrative and functional medicine modalities. And my point is to bring Ayurveda very much as a pillar that shows us how to prevent so much of the chronic metabolic disease that we see right now.
Well, I like the concept that, the mind, the body, everything is connected, and because that's really the way it is. I mean, we can't just, ideally, you want to sometimes when you're trying to go through educational processes or laboratory experiments, you want to try to separate these things out, but it's not that clean because, like you mentioned, the gut microbiome has a massive integral role in health. And ironically, that really wasn't in the US. That wasn't even 20 years ago. The gut-brain connection wasn't even known or discussed,
Right. Yeah.
So.
And it's so cool to see how in Ayurveda we talk about wake up in the morning, ignite the gut digestive fire. Throughout your day, stoke that fire and use it to metabolize your food. And when you're not using it, shut it down and don't sit there and munch all day. Don't drink ice cold drinks that shut off the digestive fire. Ayurveda says that gut is everything. It is your focus. It is your mood. It is your entire immune system. You want vitality? Invest in gut health. You want energy, invest in gut health. You want prevention, invest in gut health. So it's interesting because now that conversation's happening where we talk about gut microbiome, diversity, prebiotic food. So I find it so cool that the conversation's happening in the mainstream now.
Yeah, well, and it's kind of interesting if you think about, some of the new stuff. I mean, they have Big Pharma's even gotten into this where they're doing fecal transplantation, where they're taking the gut microbiota and, in these folks that have cancer, they've found a huge connection with the gut microbiome. And so there's a lot to that. And I think that's very interesting. But let me circle back to what you had laid out, because there's a couple of things I wanted to understand a little bit better. So you talked about circadian rhythm. And I mean, that makes a lot of lot of sense if you think about it from an ancestral man type of thing, because today we have electricity. You go to Las Vegas, you don't know if it's day or night unless you go outside of the casino, right? But
Right.
back in the day, you didn't do a whole lot of things at night except go to bed and try to stay warm and not get
Right.
eaten by the tiger or whatever, right?
True.
So we were created from a human standpoint to follow that type of circadian rhythm. And now, what's your thought process on what our society has done, night shifts, all of these different things? I mean, the disruption of circadian rhythm is well documented in the literature as being a very negative factor for overall health.
Correct.
So, all right. And then,
Correct. Yeah. What's interesting to me about circadian rhythm, like you just said, it's well documented, and yet we continue to defy it for
right,
any number of reasons. And so I became interested in circadian rhythm because when I studied turmeric, I realized, okay, turmeric is this incredible spice. It's going to reduce our inflammation. But here we are not sleeping enough and in the right windows, and we are shooting ourselves in the foot. Literally,
right,
we
right,
are destroying our body's ability to restore and heal. So Ayurveda says that 10 to 2 on the circadian clock, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., is what we call the pitta time of day or the fire time of day. It's when the body has all of this energy that it wants to use to heal, rejuvenate, clear the lymphatic system, clear our inflammation, clear everything out. But if we don't sleep 10 to 2, if every night we want to read, work, take our quiet time, we have a lot of reasons why we push bedtime. If we're constantly pushing that sleep time, we're not giving ourselves the hours we need. And modern science has also proven that the lymphatic system can collect up to 3 pounds of waste per year that doesn't get released if we don't give ourselves that quality sleep that we need. And
right.
so Ayurveda says that 10 to 2 is twice as important as the other sleep you're going to get from 2 to 6. And so I think about that a lot. If it's 11 o'clock, I'm like, go to bed. Don't get this second wind and call yourself a night owl. And then
Right.
you can't sleep till 2 because you're taking that fire and using it in the other direction. And so circadian rhythm to me is so interesting because we oftentimes sacrifice it thinking there's no cost, but there is a cost. And Ayurveda says honor sleep above all. Honoring sleep is also honoring your gut health because it's when the gut has that time to process and clear through as well.
No, that's fascinating. And I think that, with a lot of the employment situations where people work these night shifts and, those are, if you think about it, probably overall pretty high risk jobs because
Absolutely.
sleep is one of the major pillars of life, of health. And when you shift that, you're going against Mother Nature. We weren't designed to do that.
And I think when you're younger, you can do those things. I think as we age, we lose so much resiliency. And
Mhm.
so it's important if you want to do those jobs or you have to do those jobs, do them. But as much as possible, balance circadian rhythm in all the other areas of life as much as possible because you are taking a toll on the body.
Yeah, no doubt. And like you say, as you get older, you're less tolerant to these disruptions, and it
Right.
takes a little bit longer to get back on track. Especially like if you're flying from here to Europe, and you're messing yourself up for a couple of days. It's pretty apparent that why do I have this headache?
Yeah.
Right? I
Right.
mean, these things definitely go on. Now, what about Ayurvedic practice in India right now? Is it more common? Do people, you know, engage in that more than obviously here in the United States?
It's interesting. I grew up going to India every year. And growing up, I saw that whenever someone was sick, first you went to Ayurveda or the homeopath because everyone in my family and who I knew loved homeopathic remedies as a solution, or the Ayurvedic doctor would give you tools and solutions as well. But what's also interesting is with the colonialism of India and the westernization of India, India definitely switched to using the Western medical system. All schools are, built on the British system. So all
Mhm.
my cousins growing up spoke English. The country's pretty much, I would say, at least most of the educated people all speak English there. But they reach to Western medicine first. So their hospitals that are built are all using Western medicine, allopathic medicine. But now, since the pandemic, there's this huge circling back into Ayurveda, which I found really cool. So
I think
now
you're,
it's coming back.
yeah, I
But
think
what's
you're,
also interesting is, yeah, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead. I'll follow up on that.
The only thing I noticed this time, I was in India in February this year, there's a little bit of a lack of trust of Ayurveda because of the volume of people who got into the business since pandemic and are just producing supplements. And the supplement world is a really interesting world. You really have to be careful who you're buying from. And that's even true there. So I saw this mistrust happening and I was like, just buy from the big guys who've been in this business for hundreds of years and the business is passed down family to family, but don't skip over Ayurveda because you're not trusting the source. Like
Right.
my whole job finding botanicals out of India that are so potent, studied properly, and do the job. So I found that frustrating. I was like, someone needs to come back to India and put Ayurveda first again, because I don't like that mistrust.
Well, I think the COVID pandemic created a lot of mistrust
Yeah.
here in the U.S. And the other thing that I'm seeing now is there's an integration between what we'll call functional medicine and allopathic medicine. So you see a lot of hybridization where people like myself have realized that there's a tremendous amount of power in these natural plant medicines. So why wouldn't we want to integrate them into our mainstream medical practice? So I think
Right.
that's like the best of both worlds. Obviously, India's medical system is phenomenal. I mean, they train some of the best surgeons in the world. Their cardiothoracic surgeons are just over the top, skilled. And
Yeah.
it's a tremendous brain bank. There's a lot of intellectual power there. So when you look at this modality of medicine, for lack of a better way to put it, you mentioned doshas, and these doshas, there are what, 3 of them
Yes.
that comprise us. Tell us a little bit more about the doshas, because I find that very interesting.
Sure. So Ayurveda, because it's a system that's entirely based on us living in nature and being part of nature and using nature's remedies to heal our bodies and stay in sync, the doshas are created of the 5 elements. So it's
Okay.
earth, fire, air, water, ether. And so when you take those 5 elements and break them down, what Ayurveda says is when we're born, we have a certain constitution, a primary dosha and a secondary dosha. And as we live our lives due to different traumas, different life experiences, different shifts that can happen, we can become very imbalanced outside of our dosha, and we need to come back to home and be more centered within our actual dosha. And so let me explain the first one. The first one is called Vata. Here in the West, we pronounce it Vata. So Vata people are thin and wiry. They tend to be
Okay.
taller or shorter than anyone else in their demographic. Their personality type is they're a busybody. They're always in motion, always on the go, and they have certain tendency. They have tendencies towards anxiety, tendency towards disrupted sleep, disrupted gut health, constipation, different issues. So we have certain recommendations for a Vata type of person because we know they're going to need to be grounded and supported more. And their elements are primarily air and ether. Then you have the Pitta dosha. Here in the West, we put Pitta. So the Pitta person is fire with some water. This is someone who's more medium-bodied, reddish skin tone, reddish hair, early graying. This person's personality is very fiery. They're sharp, they're ambitious, they're go-getters. And when they get imbalanced, they tend to be inflamed, overreactive, over burnt out, melting down, angry, frustrated. And so a Pitta person, this personality type and body type, has to always stay cool, calm, and collected. So in the summer season, our job, actually, I'm a Pitta, our job is to stay cool, travel into cool places, really like stay out of the heat so we don't become imbalanced. And then finally, there's Kapha body types. This is someone who's bigger boned. It's earth, water, energy. Those are their elements. So this is someone who has rounder features, curlier, oilier hair, bigger bones, like I said, heavier set, stronger physique, can lift heavier than the others for sure. And a Kapha person tends to be one thing at a time. They're fiercely loyal. They're someone who really wants to care for everyone around them, so they're a caretaker type. But they can have a tendency towards a slower metabolism. And so we take that dosha type and we support them with the self-care and the things they need to move their energy. And because their digestion is slower, we give them warm cooked foods. We don't give them raw foods that are hard to digest. So there's a lot of intelligence around how we guide each dosha to eat, to live, to sleep, their schedule, the herbs they use to support themselves, and then the seasonality of how they should live to optimize for themselves.
So let me ask you this then. Once you're categorized as Vata or Pitta or is it Kapha?
Yeah, kapha.
Kapha. Once you're categorized, you don't have other elements of the other doshas. They're not. I mean, you're just only you're. I don't want to say stuck, but you're.
Yeah.
Do you have these other benefits from some of the other two?
You do. For example, I'm a Pitta, like I'm a fire personality. I'm really ambitious. I know the impact I want to make in the world. It's unquestionable that I was born a Pitta, and I was born to two Pitta parents. They were very successful entrepreneurs. But my secondary dosha is Vata. I have a tendency to go 200 miles an hour in this brain and try to do too much and then not finish what I start, which is a Vata trait. I don't carry much Kapha grounded energy, but when I had kids, my whole life stopped and I became Kapha for a period of time. I became caretaker energy, more grounded in the earth. So I had that. We have all the elements in us. But it's about what phase of life we're in, that we have tendency towards things. And then how do we do the work to come back into alignment with our original dosha so we feel like ourselves? A lot of times people find me, they've got autoimmune issues, they're so inflamed, or their primary complaint is, I don't feel like myself. Like something about my body doesn't feel right. That's when we have a dosha conversation. And sometimes people just need to understand their dosha and how to balance their own innate dosha, and then they feel better. I, as a Pitta, had lots of big issues in my life where had I known how to manage my Pitta fire, I would have been more supported. And so that's where the doshas are really cool.
Now, how do you make that diagnosis? Is it only from interview with that particular patient, or is it some of the morphology that you see? You mentioned bigger bone, that type of thing. How do you diagnose a person's primary dosha?
Yeah, certainly you can look at someone. So once you've done this for a while, you can look at someone and take a pretty educated guess. But just looking at someone, you don't know their inner workings, their personality, how their brain works. So we have dosha quizzes, and the dosha quiz will tell you, okay, primary, secondary. And then you get to have that conversation and dig a little deeper and say, okay, does this make sense? And some people are balanced in all three doshic, which makes them way harder to work with because you're like, well, how do I balance all these elements within you at the same time? But some people are more balanced in all three.
That's very interesting. So once you're diagnosed with a particular dosha, you could totally change it if circumstances, environment, your mental desire, you could switch into another one or amalgamate two or three?
You could. I mean, I had a book editor from a few years ago who edited my first book, and she and I were talking, and she's like, I don't feel like myself. Something is wrong. Like, I don't have my mojo back to work. I don't know what's wrong with me. And we got to talking. Turns out her mom had passed away, and she had been the caretaker for this very long, end of life journey for her mom. And I said, of course you're in Guffaland. Like, you were home base, you were Mother Earth. You took care of your whole family through the worst thing that could happen to your family. It's okay. Now you're going to slowly, gently walk yourself back to yourself. You need to move the metabolism. You need to move the energy. You need to get that gut digestive fire turned on. So there are these times in our lives where we shift into a different phase of life, moment of life, whatever that trauma caused. And then our job is to walk ourselves back to home until we feel like our truest self in our own body, mind, spirit. Really, the goal of Ayurveda is to bring it all into alignment.
So we've touched on, supplementation and how, eating the right things will greatly affect the gut microbiome. But does some of the other things like mindfulness and meditation, these other modalities, do they play a big role in the whole totality of the practice?
Before we continue with this great discussion, I just want to take a quick break to acknowledge this week's sponsor.
Introducing Troche, a line of professional products with patented and proprietary delivery systems that revolutionize phytocannabinoid administration. Troche products are scientifically engineered to provide fast-acting, long-lasting, reliable delivery of phytocannabinoids to support your health goals.
I started using this endocannabinoid support system several months ago, and I highly recommend it to anyone who wants to optimize their own endocannabinoid system.
Troche. Science, wellness, relief.
Absolutely. So Ayurveda teaches something called dinacharya, the daily self-care rhythm you build for yourself. And that very much starts with meditation, yoga, tongue scraping, oil pulling, starting your day with that quiet and peace that you really set the intention for yourself of what you want in your life. And I have found for myself, the more I do all the good parts of my morning routine, the better the day goes. But what most people don't know is yoga is a sister science to Ayurveda. They are literally sister sciences. So while yoga is teaching you yoga asanas, which happen on the mat, but also so much of a spiritual lifestyle, Ayurveda is how you take that lifestyle and implement it into your physical life. And so very much mindfulness, eating focused just on our food,
Right.
calming down and decompressing at different points of the day are all important. And I think the friction point there is, even for myself at times, like I want to do all this self-care and take such beautiful, awesome care of myself and eat great and hydrate and all the things. And yet I have a business day and I have motherhood responsibilities and home responsibilities. So it's like, how do you line up all of that responsibility with the volume of self-care you want? But what I've discovered is Ayurvedic self-care is so good for you. Your job is really just to fit it in tiny slices of the day and to choose yourself first. So it's easy for me to just do more work. There's always work to do.
Right.
There's always more to build, more to impact. But I try to set a rhythm to my day. So every morning by 7:30, I've had my morning tea, my aloe vera. So I've used my tongue scraper. I've done a handful of things. Then lunch, pause, take your supplements. Afternoon, have a high tea time or that afternoon coffee and take it and bring mindfulness to it. So I practice something called tea time is me time, where I just pause in my day, sip my hot tea and ask myself basic questions like, how are you doing? Have you taken care of are you going to eat today? Have you planned this week well? Do you need to change anything? And my own intuition gives me very powerful answers like, no, cancel that, change that, shift this. And those answers are very important for us to be mindful enough to take care of ourselves.
What about breath work? Is there incorporation of breath work in this practice?
Absolutely. We call it pranayam. So pranayam, breath work, meditation, yoga, these are very much part of the ancient wisdoms, ancient sciences coming out of yoga and Ayurveda, where we teach everyone bring prana and bring, life force into yourself and into your day. One problem we have nowadays is we breathe shallow throughout our day. We also talk a lot nowadays. So we're not even taking the deep breaths that we need. And so pausing to do that is obviously very powerful, which we now know is powerful for vagus nerve, anxiety, putting ourselves into rest and digest instead of fight or flight, parasympathetic, sympathetic, that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, no, I've been really working on breath work the last several months. And I've actually even had a couple of professionals work with me to try to, because it sounds really simple. It's like, oh, hell, we all know how to breathe, right? It's an autonomic function. But the truth of it is, no, we really don't know how to breathe because we're never taught it. And, one of the most powerful things that you can do is learn to breathe through your nose.
True.
And we're not, so some of like the Wim Hof breathing, even holotropic breath work, where you can, develop these near psychedelic states, pretty powerful tools. And they're very powerful from a reduction of anxiety. At least I've experienced that. And that they don't cost anything and you can do them anywhere. So if you're traveling, you can do it in a hotel just as good as you can do it in your own home. So it's very powerful. So, all right. When you start taking care of yourself, you said this, and it makes a lot of sense to me because you want to do these things, but then it's hard because you get busy. And it's like, I don't want to take time for tea, right? I don't want, because I've got to get all this stuff done. How do you kind of set your schedule, say, I'm going to fit my work in between my self-care? Is that how you do it?
I have kids, so my first schedule is them. My life
Right.
is contained within their schedule. And then
Right.
just second to their schedule is my self-care schedule. Because the business, I'm an entrepreneur. I could work 24/7, 7 days a week easily. And it's fun. I love what I do. And so I have certain days that are my business office days with my team where we have fulfillment and everything. And those days have a lot of structure. It's drop the kids to school, get your workout in, get to work. But in my office, I have my fridge, I have a toaster because I will not microwave my food. I have a tea kettle set up right there with a tea station. So within 5 feet of my desk, I can make tea all day. And I design my own Ayurvedic teas. So I love having access to tea all the time. And then I have certain work from home days, which are a little bit easier paced. I tend to be on camera all day on my Tuesday, Thursday work from home days. But at least I have the opportunity to eat more fresh food. I pause for tea before it's time to get the kids, just to
Mhm.
decompress and kind of downshift my pace before I interact with them. And then building self-care into the evening. A lot of times nowadays, life gets hectic in certain seasons. For me, my fall winter season's busy, so I'll have alarms on my phone that say 8 o'clock. An alarm goes off that says invest in self-care time, and it
Right.
has like a stack of books there just to remind me you're not doing anything. For me, at least, I'm not doing anything really productive after 8 o'clock. I
Right.
could shift now self-care time. And I have another one at 9 because a lot of the times I'll blow through the 8 o'clock. So at 9 o'clock, I'll have one that says, invest in self-care time, take time to relax for bed. And then I'll start my sleep rituals. So, worst case, even if I didn't do anything in that, let's say 4 to 7 slot, it was about kids and activities and work. I have that last piece of the day to kind of make up for it and fully decompress for sleep.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let's talk about now your PhD because I think your topic was very interesting. So tell everybody what you did your PhD in and let's talk about that.
Sure. So I was doing my master's in herbology. I was doing my master's in Ayurvedic sciences, and in herbology class, the teacher was radical about coriander's benefits, cumin's benefits, red chili powder, hing is a spice we have in Ayurveda, ashwagandha, triphala. And when she finally got to turmeric, I was like, turmeric does all that? Are you crazy? Like, if turmeric does all that, why is our entire billion-person population from India not the healthiest bunch on earth? And I think for the most part, Indians are healthy, but I think one big issue we struggle with is diabetes, which I now think is a little bit attributed to our diet. We eat a pretty high carb vegetarian diet. And I think as Indians, we're more sedentary. So I'm seeing more of my generation work out, lift, do the things we have to do. I fell in love with turmeric. And so my advisor wanted to do a PhD, which I thought was insane, but he's like, you should do a PhD. Trust me. He's like, if you want to write books on Ayurveda to change the world, a PhD will help. I said, okay, fine. And I loved the idea of turmeric because turmeric has so many vast ways that it impacts the body. It's antiviral, antibacterial, it's antifungal. We know it's a very powerful anti-inflammatory, which is why we have over 17,000 studies on turmeric sitting in PubMed. Back when I did my PhD, it was only 10,000. So in the last 5 years, the science has exploded exponentially on turmeric, the spice. I've been doing a lot of talks at orthopedics, rheumatology, neurology, and even longevity conferences like A4M. And so when I studied longevity aging with turmeric, I found so much science that we have now on how it impacts sirtuins, AMPK pathways. We know that it kills off zombie cells in the body. If there are cells that don't belong, it kills those off as well. We know that oxidation is a problem, and it reverses oxidation and reactive oxidative species in the body. We know it impacts TNF alpha and NF kappa B. So it's this, I don't want to call it miracle because when you're talking to physicians, that's the wrong word. It's very far reaching in its applications. It's very, very well absorbed and well received by the body, which for me is really exciting. So after I studied that and after I finished my PhD, anyone who came to me with a health problem, they're like, I'm catching a cold. Like, you could take turmeric for that. My knee hurts. You can take turmeric for that. So I became kind of this turmeric girl who was obsessed with using it. And my family said, if you're going to say that for the rest of your life, you should just make your own. And so I ended up developing my own formula because I had this theory. I wonder if we could source curcumin at such a high potency, third-party tested, produced in the US in the right form, so I could have Western medicine trust and recommend this to their patients. Because patients like me can't take painkillers. Like, I'm just one of those bad candidates. I get stomach aches. The trade-off is not worth it. And there's a lot of people who can't take NSAIDs. So I was just trying to build a true natural alternative for that patient if they needed one. And that's been the body of my work for 10 years now.
So let me ask you this. What's the difference between curcumin and turmeric?
Sure. So out of the entire turmeric plant, only 3% is the curcuminoids. Of those 3 curcuminoids, the one curcumin is the most effective at reducing inflammation. But what's interesting is when the consumer goes to the store, a lot of times you'll buy supplements that'll say curcuma longa. Curcuma longa is the whole plant name. They're giving you regular turmeric and saying you're getting the benefits. But we know through science that that curcumin is doing the majority of the job. So you need the extract at the highest potency at the right dosage to get the result. And what's interesting is I keep learning more about turmeric. I was just in India this year meeting with my supplier in Hyderabad. The ratio of those curcuminoids also matters for how it's absorbed in the body. And so if you want to buy a cheap curcumin, they'll just synthetically push it so it reaches the standardization numbers, but that doesn't mean that they kept the right proportion of the curcuminoids. And so for me, I always invest in the best because in the case of my health, I know I need an immune system that works. So I'm very obsessed with quality and potency and how we drive those results. But that's the difference between curcumin and turmeric. Curcumin is the extract. Turmeric is the whole plant.
Oh, see, I didn't know that. And, I've been aware of the anti-inflammatory benefits of curcumin for quite a while. But I didn't know that. That's fascinating. So let's get into that a little bit more, because I think every human that walks on the planet has a relatively high degree of inflammation. Certainly every patient that has a peripheral nerve issue is highly inflamed. What would be your recommendation for supplementation? And let's talk about your product because it's a higher quality product. Is it something that is taken every day routinely, or what's your recommendation? A, how much? B, how frequently? Just give us your take on that.
Sure. So we know through the science that there's so many scientific studies, thousands published on the effects of curcumin for knee osteoarthritis. And so when it comes to that recommended dosage, people recommend 500 milligrams twice a day. Okay. And that's a very easy dosage to find. There's a lot of supplement companies that do that. In my case, when I built Fusionary, my supplement company, I built one product called Turmeric Gold. And in there, I did the 500 milligrams of curcumin at a full dosage, then 4 milligrams black pepper extract to increase the absorption by 2,000%. And then I added regular turmeric powder back in 50 milligrams because I know that whole plant with extract has a benefit. One of my PhD advisors taught me that and said, listen, put whole plant back in with that extract. So that turmeric gold is what I'm most known for, and people take it religiously. Now, being in the business 10 years in, I do now give the caveat of, yes, we should take the supplements that are good for us. We should also cycle in and out of anything we take because the body does get used to this. Also, everyone's so bio-individual. I can't quite predict everyone who buys my product. And so I tell everyone, take a week off every quarter, take some days off, maybe take it 6 out of 7 days. Turmeric is a very strong herb to put into the system. So I think it's good for everyone. But I also think we need to cycle with all the supplements we take. We know it's not good for anyone who's on a blood thinner because it has a vasodilating effect. We know curcumin increases nitric oxide in the body as well, but twice a day is fine. What's interesting to me is I put this in the hands of orthopedics almost 10 years ago. They started giving turmeric gold to everyone with inflammation relief if the patient had significant joint pain. I thought that was interesting. I had created them as either or. Inflammation relief was my creation, where I put 400 milligrams of curcumin, but then added all the herbs from ancient Ayurveda that they would have given you if you were inflamed and you knew you were inflamed. So we put in there boswellia, dried ginger, amla, guduchi, turmeric, and the black pepper. And so that one is what I recommend. If you know you're inflamed, start there. And then if you need more support, add turmeric gold. If you're just looking for a daily preventive because you love turmeric, then take the turmeric gold. And so it's just been interesting because I get phone calls. I answer my own 800 number at Fusionary still. And I get phone calls all the time. And people are like, I can walk again. I can move again. Knee pain is gone. I can travel. A lot of people come up to me at my gym and they have these weird pains. Like they'll have a shoulder pain from a shot or something that they did, or they'll have like a finger pain that's very specific. And what's cool about turmeric is it goes after the big problems first, but then it goes after the smaller and smaller problems. Because people have also come up to me and said, "You cured my allergies. I was sneezing 20 times every time I had a sneezing attack." Or they'll say my gingivitis. So I find it really fascinating, like the ways that turmeric goes in there and heals the different things that are happening.
Now, you mean more curcumin and the turmeric combination, right? Not just,
Yeah, five.
okay.
Not
Yeah,
just regular turmeric. Regular turmeric is not going to do the job when it comes to pain and significantly reducing inflammation. Should we eat turmeric? Yes, turmeric's great. But I like using my curcumin supplement designed to be highly potent, third-party tested, clean, but also in those correct ratios so that the body receives it properly.
So that might be a little bit like we see in the cannabinoids, that you have these entourage effects. And when you just isolate one of the specific endocannabinoid molecules, it doesn't seem to do that much. It needs the rest of the plant because that's how it works in nature. So that's kind of really pretty interesting. So before we wrap up, and this is fascinating, I really am enjoying learning from you. When people want to, let's talk about your company and how they can go and get it. We've got a code for them that will give them a good discount. And so tell them about, and I'll put all this in the show notes. So tell them how they can get this product and where to go.
Sure. So my company website is Fusionary, FUSIONARY formulas.com. We made a special code POI24 will give you 15% off when you try Fusionary for the first time. And then my website is drshivani.com, SHIVANI. And on there I have the dosha quiz and inflammation challenges, like a 7-day inflammation challenge and those kinds of things. And also some Ayurvedic wisdom on the self-care and things like that to support. And then we're on Instagram and all of that with those 2 handles.
And what about the book you wrote? What's the title of it? Can they get that on Amazon? I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Sure. So my first book was called The Conscious Pregnancy because I was very passionate about how we approach pregnancy from an Ayurvedic perspective. Then I wrote a cookbook that's anti-inflammatory to show people how to eat an anti-inflammatory lifestyle. And then right now I'm writing my book for Hay House on inflammation and Ayurveda. So I'm really excited about that one because it's been many years coming, and that'll be out January 2026.
Okay, very good. That's excellent. Shivani, thank you so much for coming on. I look forward to learning more about this very fascinating, and we'll call it new medicine. It's only 5,000 years old. And I guess we're all a bunch of slow learners, right? Takes a while to.
I guess so.
Yeah. So awesome. Well, thanks so much. I really, I learned a lot from you, and I'll probably be ordering some curcumin and your special concoction, because I think there's a lot of merit to that.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome.
I'm constantly exploring new avenues to enhance well-being and address any health concerns. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to an exciting supplement called Stem Regen, which I take daily and genuinely believe could revolutionize your health journey as well. Stem Regen stands out as a game changer in the realm of wellness. Crafted from 5 potent plant extracts, it boasts a remarkable ability to stimulate the release of your body's own stem cells from your red bone marrow. Why is this significant? Well, stem cells are the superheroes of our body's natural repair system. They possess the extraordinary capacity to morph into various cell types, aiding in tissue regeneration and repair. As we age, the quantity of circulating stem cells in our system reduces significantly, impairing our body's ability to heal and rejuvenate itself effectively. Stem Regen steps in to counter this decline by kickstarting the release of stem cells into circulation, thereby bolstering your body's innate repair mechanisms. Once unleashed into your bloodstream, these mobilized stem cells actively seek out areas of damage or injury, initiating the healing process. By incorporating Stem Regen into your daily routine, you're essentially empowering your body to tap into its own regenerative prowess more efficiently. I firmly believe that Stem Regen could be a valuable addition to your wellness regimen, especially if you're seeking to fortify overall health and vitality, accelerate tissue repair, or expedite recovery from injury or illness. This first of its kind stem cell mobilizer is changing the game in regenerative medicine. Don't wait to unleash your body's innate healing capabilities. Visit stemregen.co/Dr. Steven, that's with a PH, and use the code SBPOD to get a 15% discount off your first order of Stem Regen.
I hope you all enjoyed today's show and got some truly empowering knowledge out of it. You can always follow up on anything we talked about in the show notes found at our website, podofinquiry.com. If you think you might have tickled just a few neurons inside that cerebral cortex, please spread the word to your friends and colleagues and tell them that they need to get spelunking. Also, if you can take a minute to leave a review on your podcast provider of choice, and especially Apple Podcasts, that would greatly help the show and be so appreciated, provided it's positive. And if not, then just keep your pie hole shut and stay down in that cave. Let's keep spelunking.
This podcast is designed for informational purposes only and does not constitute any medical or surgical consulting advice or imply a development of any physician-patient relationship. The opinions of guests who are featured on the show are not necessarily the opinions of Dr. Barrett or the production team. This podcast is owned solely by Barrett Medical and Surgical Media, LLC. While the show is highly oriented for physicians and healthcare providers, anyone interested in the improvement of human performance and understanding will find us a welcome goblet to sip from, or guzzle. However, no representation or warranties are made in any way whatsoever on this podcast for any products, techniques, or other things discussed. Invited guests are not vetted by the Pod of Inquiry for their qualifications and may have a direct or indirect financial interest in what they present and discuss on the show. The Pod of Inquiry disclaims any responsibility from anything taken from the show and used personally or professionally. It is a responsibility of the listener to perform their own due diligence prior to the implementation of any ideas, products, techniques, or anything talked about on the show.